I want to welcome you to our very first podcast, You in Wellness. I am your host, Kern Roberts, and what we aim to do in this series, we will engage in experts in health, experts in wellness, and experts in sport from across the Caribbean to equip you and make you the center of wellness. Join us for this series as we go through You in Wellness. So Dexter, welcome.
That's my brother.
Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you. Man, I hoping to do some real serious things in this podcast. Hoping to really educate and really, lift up people in this from this podcast. What we have going on right now is a national crisis, if you would say that way.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, I want you to tell me a little bit about yourself, no?
Well, my name is Dexter De Bellotte. I'm a counseling psychologist. I'm a trauma and crisis specialist. I've been in the field of counseling for almost 15 years, and I've seen so many things. In fact, I've been through aspects of my own social issues and psychological issues. I've had to manage that from a young person coming up.
Yeah.
And so now, even as a counseling psychologist, I'm able to see things through the eyes of the youths in a different way. I'm able to connect with a lot of the youths, a lot of the young persons, and even the things that we see taking place today. A lot of the issues that we see coming up as a country, as a nation, even regionally, a lot of the things that I do as a trauma and crisis specialist is really aimed at addressing some of these key issues that, as a nation, that we face.
Trauma and crisis specialist. How'd you get into that field?
Well, I always loved psychology. I'm one of the persons who, persons have all kind of different experiences. I used to take my sister's dolls and put them on the chair and counsel them as I come on. Right? So, you hear people say all kind of different things. But that's something I used to do.
Yeah.
I always liked counseling. I used to look at the movies where the therapists sit, and I was marveled by that. So I used to look forward to that kind of thing.
One with the long couch.
Yeah,
Sit down on the couch with your note.
You understand?
Yeah.
So I used to look into those type of movies and things like that. But it's unfortunate though that sometimes, even though you know what you love, the road you have to take to get there is different.
Because
sometimes we look in and we say, well, this person is a counseling psychologist. This person is a trauma and crisis specialist, and think, well, he just reached to being a counseling psychologist. But the road was hard, but
yeah. Tell me about that. For persons who want to know how to get there, what school they went to, what courses you had to take.
Well, I went to a small primary school in Santa Cruz Presbyterian. That's where I went primary school. I went to Success Laventille Composite, and
son of the soil, boy.
But the thing is, even as a child, my mom's single parent. I'm the second of 4 children, and growing up, life was difficult. I remember walking to school. I always give my mom kudos, because she was the type of mom who will wake up, we have no cash, and she will dress everybody and say, let me walk down the road.
Wow.
And by the time we reach down the road, she finds somebody to drop us to school, and these kind of things. And so, very humble beginnings. The era when we used to tote water. We reach home, and before I could start to do anything, you have to fill a barrel of water. And sometimes when I'm doing these programs with youths, I often ask the question, anybody that's tote water? Anybody know how to do that? Anybody that's wash the clothes with their hands?
With the hands.
Just go by the river and
go with blue soap.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These are things that I had to do growing up. I remember even my own struggles as a child. I used to come 33rd in tests. Now, when I stand as a counseling psychologist today and I ask persons, how much you think sir used to come in tests? First, second? No. The person who used to come 34th was hardly ever in school.
True.
And the person who used to come 35th, well, he and I, more or less, I used to contend to make sure that, okay, at least I'm not 35th. But looking in, somebody may not believe that, hey, Dexter used to come 33rd in tests.
So basically, how you start is not how you end, eh?
Well, most definitely.
Yeah.
Because I could tell you this as well. I remember Parents' Day. Mom comes in school, teacher says, take Dexter out of school. He's not learning nothing. Let him go and learn a trade. But when I do the maths now, taking me out of school to go and learn a trade is one thing. But if in the cases where persons can't read and write properly, how are you going to learn to do a trade if you can't read them? And it's something that even today I hear a lot. They hear, well, take him out of school and let him go and learn a trade. You can't read and you can't write.
You can't read and you can't write. Instruction manuals, all those things require you to read.
Can't even pull up a measure to say, well, you need to compute certain numbers. How are you doing that?
I got you. You
know?
So even though it's a late start, you were still able to do, and you're still able to make it out.
Well, the thing is, what happened was this. My brother and I went to the same school. And by the time he completed CXC, I look around and realize I don't want to leave school with no passes. And so I had about, because he was in Form 5, I was in 4. So that within that time frame, I had to know which subjects I might be able to pass. So the ones that I tell myself I couldn't pass, I throw it aside. You know which one was inside of that? Maths for sure. Right? So I threw maths aside. I think it was technical drawing aside and Spanish. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go after these 3 subjects. In 6 months or so, I was able to pass the 3 subjects.
Nice.
After coming to the third test and failing. And the questions I like to ask is, what's your motivation? Because I was motivated by 1, not failing. But 2, when I completed CXC and realized I had 3 passes, I say, if you could pass 3 subjects in 6 months, what you can't do?
Wow.
But when I recognize that sometimes when a child leaves secondary school, that's the time when we give up on them. So although when I left secondary school, I had 3 passes, oftentimes that's the end of education, especially for young boys.
Because for parents, I've done my part.
And you fail, so you might as well go and find a work or go and do something else.
But then tapping into motivation is a big thing. Exactly. Being able to tap into, at that point, is adolescent motivation.
Correct.
You know, and I think that's where we fall short in a big way.
Well, because imagine if I had given up then.
Wow.
Because when you finish Form 5, the culture from a cultural perspective, youths want to go and look for a work. We tell them, go and find a job, you're done.
A work. You go find a work.
Go and do that because why? You didn't do good in school, you're not good at academics.
Seen.
But I was now ready for the academic arena.
So you found yourself there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is when sometimes we give up. Because boys mature late. And I am one of, I could attest to the fact that I mature late.
You know what? You're not the only one there, you know. Because for me, myself as well, I was at the bottom of the barrel in primary school as well, you know. And then what happened, boy? I went to junior sec. And when I went to junior sec, there was, man, there was a complete shift, you know. And that complete shift, that just encouraged me to, you know, I was like, yo, I could do this. I could do this. And I did it.
Correct.
I did it, and then it was from strength to strength to strength. And then I enjoyed the mental rigors. Yeah, okay, I understand. It really is a part of mentally maturing to the point where you could manage the work that is required of you.
But then it takes you to a place as well where during that time, when you transition from that 10-year-old stage of industry versus inferiority, that's 10-year-old from about 7 or 8 to 10 years. Industry versus inferiority, that's the stage. Going into adolescence, which is really identity versus role confusion, is when the most of the issues happens. You know? When I look back on how I grew, and I'm able to now apply psychological theory to it, and we look at identity versus role confusion. We look even today. What's going on now? What's happening now? Identity. What's the identity that our youths are forming?
Seen.
Especially because that identity formation begins in the home. So when I look around home and there's no daddy, for example, and I start asking, okay, so who's supposed to show me how to be a man?
Right.
Mommy cannot do it.
Right.
Many mothers believe that they could do that. But a woman cannot teach a boy, how to be a man.
Facts there, boy. Ooh.
And sadly, because there is no figure in the home, you find that they would start venturing outside. In search of what? Somebody to show me how to be a man. And these days, society does well to show alternatives. And so the alternatives now comes in all forms and fashions, in all different roles. So we have masculine roles, gender roles, and all these things starts coming in now as to who am I?
Right.
Who am I supposed to be? Who do I emulate to become? And so even when I look at my life in the quest to become a psychologist, I had to drop becoming a psychologist for a while.
Oh, really?
I had to focus on survival.
All right, so tell me, because there are several questions I have, right? I want to know what's the difference between trauma and crisis. You know, what is trauma? What is a crisis? I want to know, how does trauma affect one's perspective in life?
I might have to bring in one of my courses, boy.
Boy. And then I want to know how does trauma or a crisis, you know, push somebody, and how does that form their mind and their thinking into an adult?
All right, so let's compartmentalize it, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's like a whole semester of work you just call out there, right? Now, the thing is, when we look at trauma, for example, trauma, person throw the word out loosely. Yeah, he traumatized. Something. Even some of my youth clients hear them say, so I traumatized, right? Trauma, we keeping it simple, right? Is the body's response to a stressful or traumatic incident.
Seen.
That could mean anything to anybody. A child could lose a toy and become traumatized. It's not always due to bullying, cyberbullying. It's not always due to domestic violence and car accidents and things like that, which are all reasons why somebody can become traumatized. Natural disasters, human trafficking, all these things. But trauma in its simplest form is really based on how I perceive what I have experienced.
If I were to go into that, you're saying that you could have physical trauma, you could have emotional trauma, you could have psychological trauma.
Correct.
You could, those are different avenues of trauma. That's what you're saying, yeah?
Correct. Yeah.
Wow.
And oftentimes, we tend to just throw it out as I'm traumatized. Or we throw it out and ascribe it to a group as if everybody experienced the same amount of trauma because they had the same traumatic experience,
Seen.
which is the issue. Because you and I could be in the same car, had the same car accident, and you traumatized and I'm not. Or I'm traumatized and you're not. It's most of the time based on the experience. And hear this. If you have had a car accident before, then this experience could just have been the trigger to remind you of the first one.
Wow. Wow.
So now, when we start having errors, when we start believing that because everybody had the same traumatic experience, that we all traumatized. We all experience a traumatic event. It doesn't mean that we are all traumatized.
Seen.
We become traumatized when our coping mechanisms fail. And how do we cope? In many positive and negative ways.
Right.
You see? And so now, if my coping strategies that I've developed over the years based on my upbringing, based on my family background, based on what I've been exposed to is good enough, I would have enough coping mechanisms within to stand the test of the traumatic experience, to hold me while I go through. If I don't, then I start developing thoughts and feelings of helplessness, hopelessness, and powerlessness. And then I start looking for other ways to cope.
We're going to come back to that because that plays a big role in person's decision making on one of the topics that we're going to cover today, suicide. Yeah? But before we get there, tell me about crisis now.
Right. So everything is tied in. Because let's just follow the theory or the topic. One, let's take the traumatic event, car accident. Somebody dies. Let's just say. Somebody dies in the car accident. You and I survive. I'll make me the victim. We experience the car accident, yes. But your resilience, very big word, it's quite high. Your coping mechanisms, you have enough. You've had experiences. You are able to center yourself. You're able to put in the right coping strategies. Maybe you had a therapist before, and you've been to counseling before. And so now your coping mechanisms holding. Because you utilize rest, diet, exercise. You know you're in a tight place, you had an experience, you call your counselor up, you go, you sit, you have your counseling sessions. You book your sessions. You have your exercise going. No negative coping, only positive.
See.
But me now, I don't have those coping strategies, right? I go home, I keep remembering the accident. I don't have a therapist. I go home, I have nobody to talk to. In fact, when I reach home, persons didn't even know I was in a car accident and somebody died. And I look around the house and who here to support me? Nobody. Everybody on the own scene. So who I going to tell that to? Because they go laugh at me and say, well, in the car accident, so if somebody dead, get over it.
Wow.
Right? And so when we in these type of environments sometimes, and it's not always hostile, you know. Sometimes the mere quality of the home is one where nobody trusts nobody, nobody speaks to nobody, or everybody on their own scene.
So we had an incident recently where a young man committed suicide because of bullying. And one of the questions that I had for myself was, one, how was he mentally processing that? You know, and so the question I'm asking is twofold. One, how did he process that to come to that conclusion? And then two, what can parents do to introduce proper coping mechanisms for their children in order to, build resilience, so that in the event that they're bullied, and we need to talk about bullying, and you could probably shed some light on what bullying is, how they deal with that and manage that, and how they train their children to do that.
When we look at what's taking place in relation to crisis, suicide doesn't come without crisis. When somebody...
Break that down for me.
I come into you.
All right.
Hold on. Come into you. You see, what happens is, when the traumatic incident takes place, and the person becomes traumatized, right? Not the event. When coping mechanisms begin to fail, right? So I begin to feel helpless. I begin to feel hopeless. I begin to feel powerless. When I ask my suicidal clients questions like, are you eating? No, Mr. De Bellotte. I don't have appetite anymore. Or I eating too much. I can't stop eating. Every time I feel stressed, I go in the fridge. I empty the house. I only want chocolate. I only want ice cream. So person start eating too much or too little. Are you sleeping? No. I'm up trolling the phone whole night. Sometimes we find ourselves doing that. You're able to now map what's taking place because you feel helpless, you feel hopeless, you feel powerless, you're not eating, you're not sleeping, having any headaches, having any body pains. All these things are signs of a pre-crisis state. When somebody goes into a pre-crisis state, this is where they start looking for external coping mechanisms to try and feel better.
So that pre-crisis state, is that a state with children as well?
Yeah. But the thing is, many persons are not trained to identify the shifts in our children.
Ooh, come on, give me a little more. So we have a lot of parents outside here.
This is why parenting classes needs to evolve with the times. Because now a lot of children are learning how to take their lives on social media. If you Google suicide, there are items in Google, they will list step by step how to take your life.
Wow. Serious?
Yeah. Just Google it. Just Google how to kill yourself.
Wow.
These are the things, because when the child comes home and the child is silent, he just don't like to talk to nobody. These are things I hear in my practice, in my clinic. He just don't like to talk to nobody, always to himself. But what's going on? We have children locked away in the bedrooms. They locked away, you believe, they're safe and on the phone, which is a big open door.
True. They're inside but they're outside.
Exactly. And no boundaries. And so what we're talking about here is we must be able to have the right kind of environments in our homes where we could communicate with our children to the extent with which they feel safe.
You know, there's a narrative where people say, you know, you get trained for a job, you go to school for a job, but you're not schooled on being a parent.
Correct.
Yeah. And being able to and if I was a child, now adult, who was traumatized, you know, licks by so, big stone, cord, grater, you know, the whole 9 yards, pot, spoon, all kind of thing. And then I now have a child, to raise that child. How can a traumatized parent raise successfully a child with good coping mechanisms?
By making a shift and realizing and recognizing that I may not have the strategies and tools necessary, so I need to go in search of them. I need to find them. I need to tell somebody I need help. I need to learn. You see, this is the thing. You go to PTA meetings and the people who are not supposed to be in PTA meetings are there. And the people who should be in PTA meetings, a lot of the times, they are not there. Right? But I believe, my own personal opinion is that the PTA should be a place where I can teach my parents strategies to help them parent.
Okay.
You see?
Okay.
And it gives us an open door to parents, to reach them, to say, Mommy, communication is not shout at. It's not talk down at. It's to come on a level platform. In my home, for example, we have family meetings. In our family meetings, we open the floor for our children to say what's going on with them. Did something happen that they didn't like? Talk to us.
Yeah.
What happened? Daddy, you do so and so and so, and you know, I didn't feel too good about it. When you come in school and you say so and so and so, and this one was there or whatever, we open the floor. Come and talk. You may not get your way, but we are able to conversate in a safe space where when you speak, you don't have to worry about getting your mouth bust.
Yeah, but some people feel that is weakness, though.
And that's the thing.
And that's like, nah, you know, this is my house, how I say it goes, kind of thing.
Yeah, because that's culture. And how do we evolve with time? Because our children will become double. They'll come home and do everything that you would want them to do, and they'll go in school and be who they want to be. So you find children finding themselves in trouble in school, and the parents saying, he's such a baby. He do that? I can't believe he do that.
A good child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not knowing
Yeah.
that it's two people they're dealing with. Because children learn to become who they need to become to survive.
Wow.
And we have a lot of children in survival mode.
So talk to me about that survival mode.
Now, when we look at all the things that are taking place today, going to school is not the easiest thing. I remember going to school and it had fights.
It is not the easiest thing.
Right? I speak to my teenage clients. My teenage clients often say they have to fight not to become a member of a gang.
Wow.
Because when they come in school, you have to choose which number you're assigned to, which gang you're in. And if you're not, that's a conscious decision to say no a few times. Right? And so even if we want to inject the bullying word, we must now understand to what levels have this bullying thing evolved to. Because it may not just be like when I was going to school, somebody will bully you and take your money. I remember the first day of school when I went in, I gone in the washroom, and as I reached in the washroom, a big Form 5 boy running the washroom, push his hand in my pocket, had $5 in my pocket, he pull it out, he take it, and he run out.
Wow. Yeah. I had experiences like that as well.
And I said, all right, that's how it is. That was a shock to me. Now, the evening when I was going home, leaving the school, walking down the main road, waiting for a maxi, some fellas cross the road. circle me, take off my watch, and go on with it.
Wow.
My first week in
First
school.
week.
So by the second week, I got in my first fight
Wow.
because somebody came at me again, and I said, I'm not going through that. So I'm saying that because we have to be careful how we label children without getting the facts. Because a lot of the times when we deal with our youths today, all we see is the actions. What they do, why you do this, why you do that, why you do the other. And even when our children engage in truant behaviors and negative behaviors, we tend to sometimes only look at the action.
So before we get into that, right, I want you to go back a little bit and tell me about the telltale signs to look out for if your child is in trouble.
Well, that comes up in different things for different people. You have to know your child. You have to know your child. And sometimes that's the issue, because we have a lot of parents who are present but absent. Right? It's in your heart this evening.
Go.
But they are the facts. These are the things that we actually dealing with.
Yeah.
A lot of parents are present but absent. So when the child comes home, we don't often recognize the change, the silence, the marks on the skin. Nah, I'm not hungry. You eating all the time, all of a sudden you're not hungry. No, I don't want to go anywhere. Mommy, I could stay home today. Daddy, I could stay home today. These are signs. Why you don't want to go to school? But why? Why all of a sudden I want to drop out of football? I want to drop out of, I don't want to go anymore. These are signs for us to pay attention to. What happened is the question we have to ask. That's why it's important to ask our children when they come home from school, how was your day?
How was your day? Yeah. I mean, my daughter just says, it was good. How do you break down that?
Well, again, it comes to knowing your child. I oftentimes say, tell me about your day.
Yeah. As opposed to how was your day? Tell me about it. Yeah.
I leave it open.
Yeah. And then so I would usually say, okay, what is good? What was good about the day?
Yeah.
And give them an opportunity to actually speak about the day.
But when we do that, as good as it is, we give them an opportunity to filter the bad. Children tend to think that they are protecting us as adults when they don't tell us the bad things.
Why though?
Because they are children. That's their nature. When you say to them, well, I didn't tell mommy because I didn't want her to worry. Because we feed them worry.
Gotcha.
So now it's a protective factor to them.
Seen.
You see?
Yeah.
And so oftentimes when children come home, we want to give them an opportunity to also be able to say what bad happened.
So you're saying that we need to create an environment where they're able to speak about good and speak about bad, and create an environment where coming to you is not a problem.
It's not hostile.
Not hostile. Ooh. Because that's a big thing too, Yeah. Mommy, I have something going on. Mommy this or mommy that. And it's like,
what you do?
Yeah.
One time, what you do? You do something wrong in school now. These are some of the things that...
Or you criticize for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it becomes withdrawals. And if when our children comes home, the first thing we do is withdraw from them, they don't want to communicate with us. Because sometimes they come home with no emotional credit. They come home with the emotions on low because as soon as they reach to school, the bullying, for example, starts. Very subtle. Nobody wants to sit by me. I have to sit in the back. Nobody plays with me. I have a particular name they give me.
Wow.
And simply, in a school environment, these things spread. Sometimes the teacher, unknowing to them, creates an environment that kind of like helps the person become bullied.
Wow.
It's and we must examine it. Because if I come to school late and you say, go outside, stand up outside, don't bother to come in my class. And you leave class after the bell rings, somebody's going to stand up and say, go outside, You come in my class late.
Yeah.
You come in my class now.
Yeah.
And we may say that's okay because they're young and they're growing and that's children. But how does that affect the person,
The
the child?
psychology of the person.
Correct.
Does that traumatize them? You know, does that tax their emotional bank, or does it tax their coping mechanism?
Yeah.
You know, and then that might not just be once for the day. That might be several interactions for the day.
Correct.
Wow.
And so, long time, I used to hear parents say, what do you have to stress about? Are you going to school? You working? You doing this? You doing that? You are not to be stressed about. But what's the reality?
Yeah, I mean, so like when I went to school, yeah, there was a lot to be stressed about though. Yeah, because it was managing my image. I thought my ears were big, you know, and so I had to manage that. And then, you know, there were people who, what did they used to call me, boy? Yeah, I had a couple names. Well,
I had some too, yeah.
Yeah, you know, and that just really so I had to manage my own self-perception, and then I had to manage their perception of me, and then now I had to create a personality to counteract their perception, all the while managing my perception. You see, so you see how stressful that is?
And all the while your brain don't fully develop until you reach about between 25 and 28 years.
And on top of that, operating with the pressures from home, which is you need to do well in school. Yeah, that's a lot.
Well, not only you need to do well, how about the homes where the parents don't say anything?
Wow.
And now the child is looking for validation. And get it at home. I get to see this term. I'm coming home with my C. I'm happy with my C. But if you didn't get an A, I don't get praise. So although I get an E or I failed last term and I come home with a C this term, it's not good enough to receive a praise.
Wow.
Well done. Look how we improve from an E or F to a C. But we create a standard that our children are not reaching. So they just say, forget school, I don't need school again.
So tell me something. How does this translate into adulthood and into the workplace? I mean, how does those traumas and you know, those insecurities and coping mechanisms or lack of translate itself into work relations?
Let me make it simple. If you fall and break your hand, and the bone protrudes through the arm, and I pick you up, I pull the bone back inside under the skin, and I put a plaster on it, and it heals. The cut heals, so there's no protruding wound.
Right.
But I never fixed the bone. What happens?
That remains unstable.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so if you've never addressed the issues that you've had in childhood, it would remain with you until you address it. Or it can lead to things becoming. So, for example, there's a course that I offer called Trauma and Me, Overcoming the Pains of My Past. Because a lot of the times, if you've never dealt with it, it ain't going away.
But so now this is the thing, you know. I mean, if I am a parent sitting listening to this, saying to myself, yo, listen, I feel like so many things that you're talking about relate to me. How do I, or where do I turn to figure this thing out? We're in mental health in the workplace month,
Right.
you know, and I have had some instances where, you know, people are definitely not in their right minds on work. You know, and you know, or they bring their past traumas onto work. You know, how does that? Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So we're speaking about a lot of things again. One, we could start from the developmental stage, because now that you've had experiences in your childhood, never dealt with them. Sometimes you've had experiences late adolescence, heading into early adulthood. Right. So let's input another developmental stage. So you went through identity versus role confusion. But this time, identity, you didn't really develop an identity. Because if you never really develop a who am I, somebody's going to tell you who you should be.
You sure? I mean, like, everybody at some point in time has some kind of...
Yeah, but a lot of persons are functioning in a role that they can't necessarily say, yeah, this is what I was born to do.
I got you.
Because a lot of my clients, I would ask them, who are you? Who are you? And they would say, well, I am Dexter De Bellotte. Yeah, but who are you?
What defines you?
Well, I am a man.
Yeah.
But who are you? I don't know, you know. A lot of persons reach that place where they'll say, I don't know. They say Dex, Mr. De Bellotte. However, I don't know. And so although you've been functioning and working for years, although you've reached and acquired, and you know, yes, you have your house, and yes, you have your car, and you have all these things that we could claim the dream life, you still don't know who you are. So when we follow that pattern and we go into this early adulthood stage of intimacy versus isolation, we have a lot of persons who didn't transition properly, or who transitioned on the lower end or the other pole, which is role confusion.
You're hitting me with some terms here, man.
Right?
Break down them terms.
It's simple. It's simple in the sense that identity, as we say, persons going around looking and trying to identify, okay, who am I? What's my place in this world? Why was I born? What is my purpose? Role confusion is I'm not sure who I am. I'm not sure who I should be. And so we see it a lot in young adolescents where this week they like this person. They like this artist. They want to dress like this person. And by tomorrow or next week, that changed. They want to be somebody else. But you didn't like this person? Not again. Right? And so we see persons cycling through different identities trying to find an identity.
Right.
That's the stage. That's
yeah.
Then now, as you reach 18, transitioning, you go into intimacy versus isolation. Intimacy is when, you know, they're now trying to find love. And they're trying to find acceptance of and companionship within the world and things like that. So you're here, you know, really trying to get your first good girlfriend or boyfriend and things like that. And
nice.
And so that when you reach into that stage, you're also going into the stage of the world of work.
Right.
But imagine going into a new environment of work and you're confused about your rules. And inside of there now, you have a lot of childhood issues and a lot of experiences that you've never dealt with. So now, for example, your way of communicating may be maladaptive.
All right.
Understand?
Gotcha.
You may have issues in communicating. You may have attachment issues. Right? And these things are deep things. These things are topics that require persons to do courses on to get the full understanding of it. But the facts are that when you enter the world of work, you stand, most of the times, you stand on the culture that you came from.
That's true.
To guide who you are in the workplace.
That is true. That is true.
And that creates the issue because that means many things for many people.
I got you.
Right?
I got you.
And so even if I cycle back to me, when I started work, my thoughts was not psychology, was survival. As a young man, finishing school, 3 passes, not really sure what, I didn't have the funds or the family that had the money to say, go and study. I had to create the environment that could lead me in a place that could fund. You know?
Yeah.
And so that took a lot. My first job was a yard boy in Europe. I'll never forget it. I was a yard boy.
Mine too.
You understand? Yeah. And it was the worst experience ever.
I had fun though.
Mine was, well, you see. So you can imagine, you're talking about the world of work. Imagine you had fun and I didn't. You could imagine I having to work there or go to another place to be a yard boy. You would go with a different attitude than me.
Scene.
You're going expecting, hey, my last yard boy work was fine, I good, I happy.
Yeah.
And I'm going there all messed up because I'm saying my first experience wasn't good at all. So I could well imagine this is not going to be good.
Yeah. Just to give you a little history on my side, during that time, that's when I met my first mentor, actually. And he I mean, he spoke volumes into my life at that time. So I would leave work to go and work.
Wow.
Yeah, working was that changed my mind in a real big way. You know, and introduced different coping mechanisms, different resolves in my mind about how I perceive myself and whatnot, and how to look forward to the future.
Right.
And you know, in that process, I recognize always to have hope.
Yeah.
Always to have hope. You know, and that's something that sticks with me even today. You know, when things get really, real hard, nah, man, it will get better. It must get better.
Yeah. But when I look at mine now,
Yeah.
I could say mine was to never be a yard boy again.
Wow.
Never. Now, when we look at it, we see where if you and I end up on the same job, we may have two different attitudes towards work.
Yeah.
Right? Only thing makes the difference is resilience and experience. Because if I've never had another experience like that to overweigh or outweigh the first experience, there may be no change in my mindset towards the job.
Seen. Yeah.
Right?
I feel
And so as we look at that, I could pull us back to a time when I was waiting for one of my first real jobs. But before I got there, I had to go through yard boy. I think at one point in time I used to do transport.
Yeah, to get the job
Back
before the
one
job.
thing.
Yeah.
I used to do all kind of different things. And it's important to say that because sometimes even our young people, they look on us and think, well, he's a counseling psychologist. What stress he could have? What kind of problems he could have? Everything was good and hunky-dory with them. And
Just reach.
that's not the case.
Yeah, it's real hard work behind that.
In fact, I remember I was waiting to get into the government services, for example. And I waited years. And one day, I lime in with friends. This is a real important story I just give her.
Yeah.
I lime in with friends, right? And we by the river and everybody. One of them light up a post. A spliff. Them days we used to call to 10 piece and 20 piece and things. So he light up, he was about a 20 piece. He light up a 20 piece. And everybody sit down in the circle by the river. And everybody pulling and passing, pulling, and reach to me. And I say, well, all the fellas know I tell her, I not on them thing, I do smoke. And them take behind me, boy. You don't smoke thing, you feel better than we and all kind of thing. And I'm standing there and I'm saying, but it's not the first time I tell her, I don't smoke. So why force? I don't smoke. Pass it around and then come back to me again. But you take a pull now, you getting on thing. By the time I realized, well, they really take a jam at me. At some point, I'm telling you, honestly, I almost take a pull, you know. Because the pressure was so much.
Yeah.
Peer pressure is not easy, you know.
Yeah.
Especially when you are the minority among the majority and everybody's singing the same song. Do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. But I thank God I didn't do it. I say, you know what?
You ain't take apple, boy.
Let me leave here. I left there and I went home. And in walking home, I was in a mess. Who them could be? I was in a mess. As soon as I reach home, my phone ring. Yeah, good day, could I speak to Mr. De Bellotte, please? Speaking. Yeah, you have to report for a medical tomorrow morning for 700 hours, ting, ting, ting. And I hope you're not smoking no weed, you know, because the first thing you have to get is a drug test.
Wow.
I just call that experience the two-pull experience.
Wow.
Because if I had taken that pull, the one-pull experience, if I had taken that pull, I may not have reached where I am today.
Seen.
And it was so easy to be railroaded by one pull. And that's something that has stayed with me, that I try my best to help people understand and see in the midst of all this pressure, all this stress, all this strain. Keep focus.
Even now, I mean, even now there's peer pressure on the job, there's peer pressure in school. Yeah, like, how does one overcome, work with, deal, manage? How?
Yeah. resilience is one. There are some people who will experience all sorts of different things and be quite okay and normal and appear to be not affected. But if you are affected, don't suffer in silence. A lot of the times the issue is we don't like to ask for help. Or we wait until crisis mode. Remember we were speaking about crisis?
Yeah.
Helplessness, hopelessness, and powerlessness.
Yeah.
Not eating, not sleeping. Those kind of issues, then to ask for help.
Wow.
And sometimes by then, it takes so much more to bring you back to a place of homeostasis or normal functioning. Because that's what we see. Things happen, even with our children. If we create the environment that they would know, hey, when something happened, don't suffer in silence. Mommy here, daddy here. On the job, you're going through something, you know it tough. Something going on home, you know it tough. Men, as men, sometimes we are guilty of that. We are chief.
Well, I want to jump in here because I have a brethren who his brother recently, off-lifed himself, and in one of his posts, he was like, why I didn't say something, and that struck me. A lot of us suffer in silence, and then to the point where there's no hope. We see it as no hope, and there's a lot to be said about that, But if I'm a person and I'm in that stage, what to do? What to do? I'm asking what to do.
And ask for help.
That could be hard, boy.
But the thing is,
They could judge me.
that's the thing.
They could look at me a certain way.
Until when?
But it could be easier for me to just done with this and move on. They could handle the scene.
You see, and that's the thing. That's what takes place. When it happens, when we develop these feelings and we have the inability, we feel the inability to cope. I know I'm not feeling myself. But everybody expect me to be Superman. I cannot be Clark Kent at any time because everybody needs me to be Superman. How could I be Clark Kent?
Yeah.
I cannot. My children expect me to be Superman. The job, the boss expect me to be Superman. My environment, everybody looks to me. When can I be Clark Kent?
That's be hard, boy.
But then we often know that we are not Superman today. Have not been Superman for a long time. But we fake it to make it. Until we reach the place where we don't have anything else left. So I can't fake it anymore because the stage 1 cancer reached stage 4. So now I have no other choice but to go in the hospital. I've had clients who had stage 1 cancer, knew they had it, and only when it reached stage 4, then the family know. Because the man didn't want to lose the cape.
So, what could a family do what to look out for? What to look out for if your family member, what could my brethren look out for, to hopefully stop or get his brother some help?
Well, the thing is, what changed?
I don't know.
Let's start there. We have to know that everybody is different. So we have to really know and put an interest into people. Persons who are suicidal does things sometimes. They would start to give away things. They would start to tie off loose ends if they plan in suicide. Right? So you would find sometimes they start giving away the favorite things. They say, boy, I had this radio system here, I have it here long. I could give it to you, I want it.
Yeah.
Pass and pick it up now, boy, I think. If anything ever happened to me, I wait to take the house. I have some money in the bank there. I want to sign it over to you.
Right.
These are not don't just take it as a gift. Ask questions. How come? What's going on? What is happening?
So, what is the mental stage, though? The mental sequence that would get somebody from crisis to, I made my decision. This is what I go and do.
So when these persons develop this helplessness, hopelessness, powerlessness, this pre-crisis state, they go looking for, and this is where addiction is born many times. They go looking for an alternative way to cope because the normal coping mechanisms has failed. Everything my body, my mind knew to cope with stressful situations has failed. So you hear them say things like, I don't know what to do. I don't have no hope again. I just don't want to do anything. The mind says, find something new. This is where we find new things coming on stream. Gambling, smoking, drinking, different sexual experiences. All these things are forms of coping, negative coping. Sometimes a positive form of coping becomes a negative form of coping right here, like work. So because now I don't know how to cope, I need to find a new way to cope. I drown myself in work so that I don't have to think about what I'm facing. So that I continue to work and work and work and work and work. You're not giving matter. You're not taking no time off. No, I'm working a double.
Yeah.
I just don't want to come home.
Yeah. You call them ways, I don't work.
Yeah, because I can't deal with it. Some persons drink to the point with which, in order to go to work, they need to take a drink. And in order to go back home, they need to medicate again. So they need to drink to go and drink to come. It's all about taking myself out of this place.
So you don't have to think.
Correct.
You don't have to think. You don't have to think about that. Go ahead, finish.
But sadly, when it wears off, it comes back like a roaring train, rushing back to the memory of where you were, which plummets you back into a place where you either have to go deeper down in depression, deeper down in your negative feelings, or medicate more.
Wow.
So now I need to work more, smoke more, drink more, gamble more. And now I immerse myself in it so much that my coping sometimes overtakes my time at work. So now I don't need to work anymore. I just need to medicate to get me away from how I feel.
But then what that then does is that it takes away resources from your ability to cope now.
That's how it affects work. Because now I'm not okay. But I'm working. So what are you going to get out of me? Only what I am being paid to do. Bare minimum.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the eye to recognize that something is wrong with me, you wouldn't know until you hear one day I overdose or I take my life. I leave the job or something like that.
So now, boy, we're going into a real different spheres here. You know? If I am that person who going through that mental process, right? What could I do to calm the thoughts or to still those thoughts that will just rush?
You see, recognize that you need help and accept that you need help. I can sit here and say, yes, fight the feeling. I can say, call somebody, get somebody to talk to. I can say, talk to a pastor, talk to somebody you trust, call up a family member. But if you have that type of experience, you would need a skilled person to help you navigate, compartmentalize, and deal with the root of the problem. Not just superficially address the issue. And that's what happens when you don't deal with the root. We need persons who, like me, who are trauma and crisis specialists, who will go into the trauma that you've experienced. Go to the root and kill the issue from the root. The root is not the marijuana, although you are an addict. It's what took place, what happened that led you to using marijuana as a form of coping. Because if I could deal with the reason why you started using to cope in the first place, you wouldn't need to cope.
True.
It will be easier for you to break the addiction.
Yeah.
But I must address the root. And sometimes that root is way in childhood, you know.
Yeah, but I don't have the money to go counseling though. Like, I don't have the money to find somebody. I mean, I smoking and I drinking and I don't have the money for that. Where I go and find somebody to do that?
And that's the other aspect of it. Where do we see value in? You know, I've realized persons find it so much easier to spend money on others than invest in self. And I know I was guilty of it at a point in time. My children ask me for anything, I try to get it for them. My wife asks me for anything, I try to get it for her. In fact, anybody from my family, my friends, needs something. But when it's time for me to walk through the mall and see something nice, like, Dexter, you don't need that. Forget that. You don't need that. But we would go all out for others.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when we recognize that we need some level of intervention, firstly, we need to see ourselves as important enough to spend that kind of funds on. One. Two, we need to also see that, hey, where am I putting out money to cope? When I could put out money, invest in myself, I wouldn't need to use that level of funds to cope with. And I believe there are some agencies and government-run agencies that also offer some level of counseling for free, right? So go in search of help. I think that's most important. Seek it. Seek it out.
Yeah.
Ask for it. Say, I need help.
Seen.
Call somebody up. I have persons who are not able to have counseling, but there are people who are willing to sponsor. Say, hey, I will sponsor the brother. The brother need this. I will sponsor the person as well. If you sponsor this person, I'll give you a discount on the person. Because we are about helping persons transitioning lives, taking the journey to your best self. A lot of persons haven't taken that journey because they don't know self.
Wow.
And yes, you're successful because it's not always the person who down and out, you know. There's high functioning depression. A lot of men are highly successful. A lot of women are highly successful. And when they sit in the quiet of the night, they are depressed, contemplating taking their lives, and they want for nothing. And so these are some of the things that we must. I'm glad we're talking about them.
Yeah. It's real thought-provoking, almost emotional too. I mean, just thinking about some friends that I have or persons who have come across my path, you know, all in all itself. We talked about recognizing signs and symptoms of somebody who is suicidal. We talked about how could a suicidal person, you know, just recognize those thoughts and really address those thoughts. You also mentioned that asking for help is really them knowing that they need help, recognizing that they need help and asking for help is a big thing. What next? What's next?
So one of the things I think is necessary is psychoeducation. Sometimes we fail to see training as important. I think a lot of persons need to become sensitized about trauma, but the real aspect of trauma, not just the superficial word, believing that it affects everybody the same way, because it doesn't. So we need to have the right level of advocacy going out there, helping persons to know, hey, it's okay to ask for help, you know. Especially as men. When you look at things that are out there for us, it's really in the minority, you know. And men are affected. But a lot of men don't feel comfortable coming out and speaking. They prefer to bundle up in the bar and sit down and sip and enjoy themselves and talk.
I don't want to look soft, though.
Exactly. Because there's a perception as well that saying I need help is weak, is ascribed to being weak. And it also comes from a culture of growing up believing that, hey, boys don't cry.
Yeah, but you can't touch the emotional side of me. That where you getting on it?
And
you can't do that.
And we and hear this. There's another aspect of it, you know. Because while when I fall down and I started crying, and somebody says, "Get up, boy, boys don't cry. Get up, what are you crying for? Dust off yourself, hush your mouth." And I see my sister fall. Come, baby, come, let me kiss it. It better, come. Come, oh gosh, come, give me a hug. Come, let me kiss it. And I see that. My sister saw. You tell me, girl, boys don't cry. She learned that. So when we become adults and a man cries in front of her, will we crying? What you crying for? Boy, I'm telling you, boy, you's a girl or what? Boys don't cry, man don't cry. What kind of man you is?
Yeah.
Because they have learned a culture that, hey, men don't cry. And the man have learned a culture that men don't cry.
Sometimes some women could rail pong you too, you know.
Exactly. And so it kind of feeds into that whole perception that a man not supposed to feel. You know what's accepted? Anger is accepted. Anger is accepted. Because even culturally, when a man gets angry, some women, you will see them like, yeah, that is a man.
They like that.
That is a man.
Yeah.
You know? And these are some of the things that we have to work on. Because if men are not in touch with that emotional side, then there's a part of society missing. There's an emotional aspect to growing our young men that is missing. And I mean, some persons may disagree. You may disagree. But let's look at it. When a woman gets into a relationship with a man, what is she asking for? She wants love and affection.
Yeah.
She wants somebody who's kind, somebody who's loving, somebody who could take care of, who could pay attention to her emotionally. But if I'm not emotionally connected, where are you getting that from? When all I know is anger.
Yeah, yeah. And you're looking for a different kind of response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you never teach it to me, where are you getting it from? So if I don't learn it, how we could get it?
And then she's saying, baby, I just want you to be soft with me. All I know is anger.
That's why I said advocacy, psychoeducation is needed to teach us men. And it means that we have to start from a place where it will be easy to input into society. From schools.
From school. So what are you suggesting here? Tell me what you're suggesting.
Well, I mean, when we look at it, if we think about it, school is the place where we teach and we input all kind of different types of learning into our children. So why not input the emotional intelligence required for the next developmental stage? Why not equip them with understanding, hey, you could love, you could feel. One may say it's there already. I may say, is it? My thing is, look like COVID-19, for example. COVID-19 occurred. We went back into the school system with a traumatized nation.
True.
And then we started seeing a lot of different behaviors coming out. And many people died during COVID-19.
You know, as you're saying that, COVID was brutal, you know?
Yeah.
COVID took members of your family and say, here, hold that. Or give me this. You take grief.
Yeah.
And you had to deal with that, you know?
Yeah. And you went back in school and people were missing. The stages are grief, denial, anger. Let's just stay on stage 1 and 2.
Go through all these stages and then we come back to that.
So, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, then acceptance. And you could cycle through any stage at any point in time. So, when we look at it through that lens, and then we look at what's taking place within the school system, what do we see? We see a lot of fighting, a lot of feistiness, a lot of anger. We look back now. Let's look into our own catchment. What's taking place in our nation? What's taking place in our pool? Okay, we came out of a place of COVID-19. What took place during COVID-19? A lot of grief and loss. Persons lost their ability to socialize. Children lost their ability to be running around in school, socializing with their friends. These things also could have an impact on them. It could also traumatize them.
Wow. So you're talking about a whole nation that is traumatized, potentially traumatized.
Maybe traumatized. And let's look at it this way. What's in our pool again? I ask the question, what do we see? Murders skyrocketing, 500 a year plus. Each man that dies and each woman that dies and each child that dies has a family.
True.
So we have persons who may be going through the stages of grief and loss and now multiple traumas. Right? And then we have a nation that can become vicariously traumatized based on the stories of trauma that also gives us almost the same signs and symptoms of trauma. How many persons look at the news or wants to see the news now?
Yeah, I've stopped watching news altogether.
That's a sign.
Altogether.
I just can't stand to see another murder.
Yeah.
I just can't stand to see another sad story, another bad story.
And so you're getting it on social media. Easy,
Exactly.
easy.
And the more you view the story over and over and over and over, it affects you.
The more trauma you expose yourself to.
It affects you. Some persons look at the news and become nauseous.
Yeah.
They say they're giddy, lightheaded.
Yeah.
And these are the things that we now have to look within and now say, hey, what is needed to fix this? Do we need a national trauma protocol? Do we need to look in and really say, hey, this is not just about general counseling anymore. It's not just to say, well, we send counselors. Because I'm not knocking nobody. It's all hands on deck, yes. But why do you need a cardiologist? And they are general practitioners. Why do you need a specialist in medicine? Why do people specialize in cardiology and all these other arms of medicine?
Yeah.
It's because it is needed to deal with a particular issue.
See.
And so if we have a traumatic issue, yes, there may be some doctors who could deal with or do the work that the cardiologist does to an extent. But why then are there trauma specialists? Why are there marriage and family specialists? Why are there addiction specialists? It's there because that's a particular genre that is needed. And so while we could have the persons who go in and they do all that is necessary to get to the persons, if persons require specialists, that's what would be needed to get them out of these places.
What can the counseling center, counseling clinic, a trauma and crisis specialist like yourself, how can you help persons, walk through or guide them through, what they're going through?
One of the things we do at the counseling clinic is we take a different approach to counseling. Most persons believe you're just coming in, you sit down, and the person talk, right? You don't do talking alone. You come into the counseling clinic, we are able to give you an assessment. I'm able to look at your stress levels and show you on screen, hey, this is where your total distress is. This is your anxiety levels. These are your depression levels. This is your stress level. And now we're able to use data, artificial intelligence as well to now be able to help you to see and map your progress. Right? So we do standardized testing as well to run along with your counseling sessions and your development, right? We also offer life coaching. Because sometimes when you reach a place in counseling, you'll hear people say, I find I'm just going wrong in circles in counseling. Right? And you persons find themselves going around in circles with the counselor because sometimes when they reach one particular place, they need something more now to add to it. And sometimes the problem is the client. Sometimes the clients, they don't want to put in the work, and I make it clear very early. Counseling is a trade-off. I input, you input. It's a partnership. I help you, but I could say all I want in this session, and we could do all we want. But you have a responsibility as well to do the homework.
Yeah.
And we walk through our clients. Yes, you may make mistakes. Yes, you may fall, but don't suffer in silence. Accept that, hey, listen, Dex, Mr. De Bellotte, I need some help, just call. You don't know what to do. Don't try to find the answer and come. Come, let's find the answer. Come, let's work it out together. Let's find out what's going on. Because oftentimes what I've found is that what you present to me as the issue is hardly ever the real problem. And so persons come thinking, well, them don't diagnose themselves. They don't know what's going on. Well, Mr. De Bellotte, I going through this. I have this. And I had depression. I suicidal. I this. And by the time we finish do the assessment, it's none of that.
So if somebody were to get in contact with you, how would they do that?
Well, we are all over the place, right? You could call me at 308-0359. You could go up on our website, for example, at thecounselingclinic1.com. Thecounselingclinic1.com. We are on Instagram as well, Counseling Clinic 1. Instagram, Counseling Clinic 1. TikTok, Counseling Clinic 1. You know, so we all over. And the thing about it is, you can go up on Google. You just type in The Counseling Clinic Limited, and all of our information comes up.
D as in the letter D.
Yeah, the
Right.
THE,
Yeah.
The Counseling Clinic Limited. And if that fails, type in Dexter De Bellotte, and everything would come up again, right? We wanted to make sure that we are accessible, we are reachable,
Yeah.
right? We also located at number 189 Eastern Main Road, Aruka.
Okay.
And if you type in 189 Eastern Main Road, Aruka on your phone, Waze, Google Maps brings you right in front of the office.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's the best way that they could get in contact with me. And, you know, we really there to help our people.
I appreciate that.
You know?
Dexter, I really thank you for taking the time to come and really talk to us about, bullying, and talk to us about peer pressure, and talk to us about suicide, and, some of the real topics that affect our mental health, and the thing about it is that the more that we talk is the more that we have to talk.
Correct.
Because what we've just done right now is just scratch the surface.
That's right.
But I hope that in scratching the surface, it's enough to urge people to understand that, listen, you need to ask for help.
Correct.
Or we need to spend more time knowing the people around us.
Correct.
To recognize the signs of when they need help, and reach out to them whenever in a real meaningful way. Yeah. So Dexter, man, I really thank you for.
Hey, very welcome.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, man. Thank you for spending time with us today.